right now, you're all effectively the early adopters, which means when this comes along and picks everyone up with VR, and we hit that inflection point and everyone starts getting involved, then all of a sudden it's going to be fantastic, because we're all going to get picked up with this, because there's going to be so much demand for people with skills and knowledge in it. And the more teachers we can get involved in this, that's going to be brilliant. They're all going to be caught up in this. So I've always loved this little saying here: the future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And that's so true, because again, we seem to be like it's a publicized secret, and most people still aren't aware of what we've been able to get up to. So my background, I started a lot of careers, but my main ones, I was in the RAF. That led to a lot of training. And I know when I was in the RAF, kind of I was always looking a little bit more one taking a tablet or a phone to an aircraft when we were doing training and taking photos of the work that we were doing. And when I showed it afterwards back in the classroom, people were like, what a fantastic idea, you took a photo of something, you know. And they seemed amazed by the fact of just using a simple bit of technology in such a simple way. And then whoops, I've jumped forward. Then on to college. So I've 8 years teaching in college, so it was very vocational, and that's where we started to learn the power of VR. So for me, it's really the last couple of years where I started researching technology, its impact on education and industry. And that's where I kind of learned as well about the certainly the strength of VR. So we looked at everything from IoT even down to like CRISPR, but VR was a big thing that stood out that we knew was going to make the biggest impact going forward. And that led me to want to run our little project. So anyway, so this is where I am now. So I've now joined Immersive VR Education. I'm very, very lucky, fortunate to be in this position to be able to a fantastic group. And so that means I can now spend my time working with this brilliant package, and being able to spread it further afield, more colleges, more schools, more companies, and show them the power of what we can do with virtual reality and moving forward. So this is where it all started. So with Steve Banbury and these sessions, that's what encouraged me to start with, and starting to this, and that's where it's all gone forward. Point when I turned around to Steve Banbury and I said, I've got an idea. I said, it's a crazy idea. I said, I'd love to make us a VR classroom and have you teach it in Dubai. And obviously everyone comes up with all the errors that could possibly go wrong. The problem happened was I spoke to David Whelan at a conference where I met him, and I mentioned the idea to him, and he said, yeah, fine, let's give it a go, it'll be fun. And that's where Classroom VR was born. And so the idea really was to be able to say, let's see if we can actually do it, package a whole bunch of headsets together. We'd seen the photo of Alvin Graylin being able to do it out in China, but that was one case that had like the best of HTC doing it out there. And we were going, can we do it over here? Would we be able to recreate what they've done? And the answer is, well, obviously, yes. And the great thing is HTC have been wonderful for us. They've got a really personal presence over here in the UK. And we reached out to them and they were like, yeah, let's come along, let's get involved, let's help you out and make it happen. And so certainly they've been fantastic for us in being able to take it forward and get into education. They're really, really keen to help it work. And that's what I see is education is going to be the main driver going forward, because certainly it's like having your first bank account. You tend to stay with your first bank account a long time, and that's the thing with virtual reality, is what the students tend to learn. That's what they'll get used to and stick with. So here is the classroom. That's what we built, and the photos floated around quite. And as you can see here, so we had 10 all together. You can see a whole bunch of them in the classroom, and the students were all first time sat in, and we got everything linked with Eva out in Dubai. So the way the lesson went, well, I'll take you through that in a second. I was adding some photos onto this earlier, and as I was looking through photos, I just noticed these ones. And the one thing that stood out to me as I noticed these images is you'll see all the students, they're looking up, they're looking around, often the mouths are open. The thing I suddenly realized was this, was they were immersed in their surrounding. And that's something that really played with me when I looked back at the normal classroom. A student's never immersed in their surrounding in the classroom. We can get them to draw some nice colourful posters and put them on the wall. but then they're just colourful posters that have been on the wall, and after 2 weeks, they're just tatty old posters that are put on the wall because they start getting knocked and bashed a little bit, and then it's good. This one, the scenery is always fresh and exciting. And they're completely immersed in the scenery. They weren't there looking around at that same classroom thinking, actually, I'd rather be looking at my phone right now and seeing if the message is coming in. None of these students were at all interested in their phone for any of this period of time now, because they were completely got by the area that they're in. And this is the thing, we'd managed to really capture them. We were speaking their language, as you often hear. So we'll throw that around saying, oh, you got to speak the student's language. And, you know, we hear teachers coming in sometimes misunderstanding it, actually going, okay, yeah, no, slow down, bruv, innit? And not speaking this language. And this is the language that we want, is to be able to talk technology. And this is exactly what we managed to capture with them. And as I say, these sort of photos really made me recognize what was happening. And so Steve Bambury's lesson, we had, first of all, he met them on the moon, and he came out and showed them experiences out the moon, then went out to Mars, and they did an actual field trip on Mars. So hi Steve, can you hold on? Steve, there we go. Steve, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Fantastic.
How are we doing?
Good. Was I going right there? You can all hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I'm going to go down there. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave you to it, Chris.
Fantastic. So obviously Steve was a wonderful teacher for this group, and so the beauty of it was, is he took them out to Mars, and so a field trip, and so they went off around Mars, the various different vehicles that had been out to Mars for their orientation, to speak to them first time. It was literally here. This was their classroom had for to start their lesson off, where they first met Bambury. So they were sat back in that classroom in a college just in England, and but their teacher was based in Dubai and now been able to deliver this. So once they'd done a field trip out back to Earth, and they went down to Avebury in Wiltshire, and so here they are, and they got sent on a task out in Avebury. Now, the beauty of this was they walk for, you know, it was miles, a huge area, and they could walk over the whole area, and went off on tasks that they had to do. They needed to gather evidence, so they were taking photos of it. Whoops. And gather evidence. Oh, there we go. So they were taking photos. The one big thing happened, and Steve suffered a huge problem that we always fear when you take students on field trips, is the student. Now, we can all talk, just, you know, even though I've muted you all at the moment, you know, we're on a field trip, I can listen to you all, and we can all talk together. So we had a student turn around and say, I'm lost. I don't know where I am. I can't see you all. I can't see where it is. I'm completely lost. So, of course, the beauty of reality is we've got the real world, we can do everything we can do in the real world, but we can also display the laws of physics. So Steve did the normal thing. He stuck a giant brontosaurus up in the sky, and with a huge brontosaurus, all of a sudden, student was like, oh, yeah, I can do that. And he could just follow his way over there and the rest of the crowd, and they were back into the lesson as normal, and nice and simple. And even if we had lost him completely, couldn't get him back, who cares? Pop the headset off. There you go. He's appeared in the classroom. So anyway, so that went on, and we came back, and this is another beautiful opportunity, as we now was able to get hold of Lauren Carpenter, co-founder of Pixar. He was able to come and deliver a talk. Now, one thing when you get certainly celebrity-like people is it's always a challenge. Everyone wants a piece of their time, okay? A lot of you be in the same position where people want pieces of your time, and it always becomes expensive, certainly when you've got to travel somewhere. And that's always the thing, is travel expenses to be able to get somewhere. The beauty of VR, like today, we've managed to get some absolutely amazing speakers out there and bring them in because there's no travel involved. So Lauren Carpenter, in his lounge at home, was able to pop a headset on. Oh, hello, David. And pop a headset on and join the class and deliver a lesson. And it cost us nothing in education, which was absolutely, you know, exactly what we wanted. We never, ever would have been able to achieve this. And for Lauren Carpenter to be in the class with them. And so then finished off with, and this is actually a really, really important picture. This is one of the key parts that comes with it, is Steve took a selfie at the end. Now, at the time, it's a bit of fun. Let's take a selfie with a student. The most important part of this is the fact that he could, and he was doing it in a room with them. Now, you might have heard Alvin Grayling, when he was talking earlier, mentioned about the the drop-off of people achieving the MOOCs, the massive open online courses. Only 30% actually complete a course. And one of the reasons that is we did some study on the MOOCs over here, and we were looking at like Open University. Why were there so low numbers completing it? And what's happened is they have a very impersonal relationship with their teacher. They often just talk by leaving messages on a chat board, and they can get together and have a tutorial. And often you'll have like a 1 hour tutorial a month, but you've got to travel to that location. Now, if you're in the center of England and you've got to come from like the edge of England, which can be like 3 hours, and certainly a lot of you come from even bigger countries that we are, if you're expected to travel, which could be like a day's travel to get somewhere, it's just not going to happen. Whereas when we're in this location now, the fact that we can get up close and personal with each other and we can talk freely, that is what all of a sudden opens up this relationship, just like in a normal classroom. Having that relationship now, that's what will be able to encourage people to stay onto the courses. That's what we're really, really looking for. So, two big things going forward. I've been looking recently at the side of the leadership part of the education. Why would leadership need to invest in VR? Why are we going to encourage them to invest in all this hardware to be able to bring this content on board and use VR? So there's two great things that leadership need to weigh up: cost and retention. How much is it going to cost them, and what they're going to get out of it at the end? You know, as in when I say retention, it's memory retention. What's the achievement how's it going to affect the achievement? So they need to know, why is VR going to give them that higher rates? So first thing to have a quick look at is the cost. This is Martech's law. Martech's law is really cool. Okay, so any company, when it sets up, it will start out around here. And as you start up as a new company, you tend to get the latest technology that's out there, okay, which is brilliant. The thing with technology is it follows this exponential curve going up, okay? It's advancing constantly all the time. Whereas the company will tend to follow a logarithmic curve, which plateaus off after a time. And the thing is this gap in between gets bigger. Now, as that gap gets bigger, eventually a company will reset. And so we've seen it in the likes of international companies like Kodak, for instance. They went through a reset. They decided, no, we're going to stick with film. We're pretty good at that. And eventually film died out enough and that reset happened. And now they're going through their rebuild, obviously, as they've got now into crypto mining and building that. So they've gone through that reset. Now, we're not saying you've got to keep on that exponential curve, because that's super expensive to be able to do that. But it's finding that balance in the middle. So imagine it at the moment, if we consider technology now, we could say that next year VR is going to get cheaper. The hardware is going to get cheaper. Yes, it is. The year after that, it'll get cheaper again. Yes. Then you look at it another way. Bread, for example, will get more expensive. Next year, it will go up in price. The year after that, it goes up with inflation. That's the way it works. So at some point, you've got to make that decision when you're going to get on board. Now you can get on board with VR. Now it's not out of reach to be able to get on board with VR. And what will happen is, if you decide to wait a year, then all of a sudden next year, you'll be without experience using VR, and your students will be a year without the greater retention and the greater achievement. If you decided to go on board with just the bread now, all you'll have next year is a bigger pile of moldy bread, okay? So it's not going to do anything great for you. So that was cost. Moving forward, retention. Why does VR work? Okay, so I've really loved starting to learn about this, and this is very, very, very basic, but the way it works. So we live in a 3D world. Okay, so if we look at that, I'm told I was wrong. I thought that was an upward dog pose for what do you call it? I've forgotten anyway. That's I thought yoga. Apparently it's cobra yoga. That's it. Thanks very much, Mike. And so we live in a 3D world. We see everything 3D, just like we are right now in VR. And but the way we try to teach is so it's like this. Okay, our brains don't like this. So a teacher's job is extra hard, because it's got to take a 3D world and funnel it through a 2D pattern. And then so it coming into our head. And the problem is, the way our head likes to work, the way our brain likes to work, is like this. Okay, now I'm not expecting you to read all of this, don't worry, but there's loads of things going on in our 3D world. In normal life that we live, there's all of these things going on. All areas of our brain are firing in every experience we do. When we sit a student down in the routine, normal classroom, everything is still and stationary and normal, we're only ever firing a quarter of their brain, the first little front bit of their brain we're using. And it's the same as if you're watching a TV documentary. They're really great and interesting when you watch them. But again, I've done this recently. I watched the documentary with my son. 2 weeks later, I couldn't really remember anything of it. So so this is where we need to be able to obviously now teach via the 3D matter. Certainly that's where VR is the most effective tool that we've got to be able to do this. And so that's going to be able to bring it down, teaching faster, more effectively. I'm not going to teach you Edgar Dale's Code of Learning, because no doubt you are very well aware of it. That's a bit of a shock. Because we can now get the 90% retention on every lesson that we're doing. So one final thing, one thing I hear all the time, is VR dead? Lots of people are saying this, and certainly we all believe it, and the fact that we're all in it, we all believe that this is not true. We know that it's going forward, and the thing that I'm going around, and I always need to tell the leadership of the colleges that are afraid to get on board, say, oh, it's had its time, it's not working, and say, no, it's not. What it is there's this graph. Now, I assume you're all looking to learn this completely. You'll be tested at this afterwards. Not really. There's only 3 key points I want to look at. There's lots and lots here. This has come from a university whose name is completely forgot me out in the States, created this. And basically, this is a graph of all the adoptions of every piece of technology over time. Oops, I've been twisted. And the 3 that I've circled here, it's the first one. This is a TV, and over here, this is the mobile phone. And with both of those, if you can get right in here, you see there's about a 5-year lag before it kicks off. So this is where how we've kind of guesstimated when the inflection point will be for VR is we're going to get to this. We're on this little drag curve at the moment. Like the TV, it wasn't great to start with because there weren't many TV programs and enough of your neighbors didn't have it. When enough of your friends and neighbors had it and there were more TV programs, people got on board. We're getting lots of good content now. The price isn't as much a problem. It's now just a case of getting enough people headsets and using it to hit that inflection point. This one in the middle, incidentally, was TV, and it's got a really long drag curve for that. And so we were looking at that as well. Why is the color TV even longer drag curve? Because people knew why a TV was good. And the reason for that, well, we speculate is because it's again that cost thing now. It's that reset. Is you know, you've got a black and white, a lot of money on that. Okay, we now need to be in a position of going right. Is it worth now changing again? Certainly, when I was young, I know I don't for this age, but when I was young, we had I had a black and white TV. Okay, family was all black and white, and it took a little while before we got color as well into our house. And so. Moving forward, where do you want to go? I would say the big thing is to be able to reach out to anyone that because of the people that I met here. Okay, it was speaking to the likes of Steve Bambury, introduced me then onto Immersive VR, HTC I met in there, all of the people that were important I've met in these CPD VR events, and that's what's made everything happen. And then via Twitter, and I look out amongst all these names here, and I've had so much fun chatting to you all in the past for different things, and that's what we really want to do now, is grow this as much as possible to be able to get it to the next stage. Now, I've spoken as fast as I can, and I have no idea what the time is. Oh, 5:02. I am good at this. So I'm going to quickly unmute everyone.
Because I've got like 5 minutes now until I'm in.
That's it. So I'm going to have to jump out any second, but just very quickly, think anyone have questions, encourage as many people as I can to get on board with Twitter, to follow all of the people, including all of you lot, to be able to do this and share. I can see if we've not got any questions, I'm going to jump out because I need to go and get the next room ready for our diversity panel, which I'm really looking forward to seeing. So thank you all very much for coming. It's been wonderful seeing you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you off in the background on the rest. Okay.
That's great. Terrific.
Cheers,